This next segment is going to be a little different. This one's going to be about media. My name is, just really quick, my name is Stephen Galanti, Communications Coordinator for the Citizens Campaign. Thank you.
Much better.
So step 3 in the 10-step requires evidence-based research. Now, we tell you, use Google, use the internet, search for your solution. Now, in the modern age, you're getting information from everywhere. You're being bombarded with information. And now this term has crept into the conversation, fake news, disinformation. Can you be sure that the information that you're researching is indeed what you want to be researching? If you're going to go to a mayor and council and you're going to present this and they see that the information you're giving them is factually incorrect, they're going to halt you. And they're not even going to listen to you. So we want to make sure that we give you the tools that you need to ensure that the information, the research that you're doing is factual and right to the point. So right next to me is Joe Amditis. He is Assistant Director. Associate Director of the Center for Cooperative Media, Montclair State University. And I'll hand it off to him.
Hey everybody. All right, I'm going to be moving around up here a little bit. You guys can keep eating. We're going to do a quick little fun activity up here before we get into the discussion. I think this is cool to do. This is always fun. I do this for high schools in New Jersey. The last one I did was Red Bank Regional, and the high school students love this. And let's be honest, those years that make up best music also make up how you think, right? And how you process information and how you approach the world and the critical mindset that you have when you approach things. So to foster that critical mindset, we have First Draft News put together these series of observation, verification, challenges, and activities. They're really simple. Each photograph in this challenge, I believe there's only 4, maybe 3, contains visual clues to help you identify where it was taken. You will have 4 chances to get each one right. This is informal. I'm just going to have you yell it out. Like, just yell out, and I'm going to start typing in, cities. And hopefully I'll spell them right, and hopefully this won't turn into an embarrassing exercise for me. The hints are going to appear if we mess up. Every time we screw up, there's going to be a little hint. Oh, maybe check the side of the bus. What language is that in? That kind of thing. Because the first step to being skeptical, or the first step to verification is just being skeptical of pretty much everything. You should challenge power, you should question assumptions, and oftentimes that power and those assumptions stand up to criticism, and that's great, but a lot of times they don't. So you should be willing to challenge things consistently, not only recognize when they meet the challenge, but continue to challenge when they don't. Okay, so we're going to start, enough of me blabbing, here we go. Okay, type the name of the country. So let's go ahead and take a good look. Don't just shout it out right away. Give it 2 seconds, then you can start shouting. And from this, can we see this? Is there a way to take these lights down so that it's probably hard to see in the back, I know.
Palestine.
Lebanon?
I heard Palestine, I heard Lebanon. Let's try Palestine first.
No, it's Russia. It's Eastern Bloc country.
Incorrect. Nope, the Western European architecture, it says. Let's try again. What do you say, Lebanon? You still want to do that?
Czechoslovakia or
USA? Okay, let's try it. Incorrect.
Bosnia.
Identify the language on the banner.
Bosnia.
France.
I heard France. Let's try France here. Boom. Okay. So your first, your second, your third assumption is not always right. And you see these cues, the color cues, anything, little subtleties in a picture can automatically make you assume things. And that's exactly what happens when you see on your social feed, and you got that title card image at the top, a snazzy headline that tells you not only what's happening, but how to feel about it. And then all of a sudden, boom, you're already 3/4 of the way to believing something you have no idea if it's true, even before you've read or even clicked on the article. All right, and this is not you are a bunch of smart people. I'm sure there are people who are still learning, and you've already experienced all this. There are people who are still learning, who have not had the time to develop these critical skills, who are surfing social media, spreading these. A share from a 6-year-old is just as powerful as a share from a 60-year-old who has all this experience to share in the same stuff, and it still has the same weight. So you have to make sure that you're trained from an early age to recognize these things and be critical. Next one, I think we're only going to do one or two more because I only have 20 minutes. I don't want to take up too much time. Name the city. Let's see. Let's do it.
New York.
New York. Let's try it. Correct. Boom, nice, first shot. There you go, you take some time to examine it. All right, next one, let's do this one. This one's harder. Name the city.
Quebec.
Quebec, okay. Wow. Wow, very nice. All right, there we go.
Just there.
Ah, okay, it's cheating, okay. All right, let's go, name this city. For the last one, I believe this is the last one. Take a good look at all the cues.
London.
London, want to try London? Let's try it.
No. Triangle.
Next.
It's France. It's Paris.
Paris? Paris, let's try that.
Because it's Gary Lafayette.
We got 2 more tries.
Philadelphia.
Berlin, I heard Berlin. Let's try Berlin. Boom, okay. 4 out of 4 is not bad. That is not bad. I usually have the high school kids take out their phones and Google it along the way. They're fast enough, but they rarely get all 4, so good job. All right, so that is one example of how you can train yourself constantly to approach media literacy. Now, when you say media literacy, we're not just talking about fake news. Ask any community of color, and their narratives have been distorted and manipulated and had disinformation for decades and decades. This is not a new thing, that our narratives are not being presented in the way that we expect them, and the information that we thought was true is maybe not, and there are other people who believe different things. For the mainstream media and the way that this happened, this is like panic right now because their narrative has been questioned, and there's a disarray right now in what to do. How do we find solutions? And it is a real problem. Because, like I said, it's never been easier to share or distribute this misinformation, and it's not even always intentional. That goes to the no blame thing. Sometimes people just share or read or think certain things that you can't really trace a cause or a root to, but it's still incorrect. They're not doing it intentionally. There are plenty of people who are doing it intentionally and profiting off of that, right? Or at least gaining something, and that's the scary part. You have to make sure you're on guard for that. And it's kind of like a burglar. When they come to your house, you can't be on guard all the time with a watchdog and everything. You can't always do everything, but you can do little things like locking your front door, so that maybe the lazy criminal who doesn't want to have to break into a door will skip your house, right? He's jiggling the door handles, okay? So these are the kind of things you can do in advance to kind of set your door locks. Maybe put your deadbolt, when you're not paying attention, okay? When you're not around. Again, my name is Joe Amditis. You guys can find me on Twitter at JSAmditis or jmditis@gmail.com if you want to tell me how wrong I was about anything I'm saying up here today. So let's get down to what we're actually talking about. Like I said, fake news and media literacy is not a new problem. We are not talking about this at the moment, but this is something I'm sure many of you will remember seeing. You still can in supermarkets. We're not talking about these painkillers or don't be bald vacuum cap. I mean, there's misinformation out there all the time. Like I said, people make money off it, but we're not talking about this because this is something that's already been absorbed into our society. So, right? This is where we end up. Right? Everybody's looking around. Nobody knows what's true anymore, right? What are we talking about? It's this kind of stuff. This is the stuff, and you can tell, and I'm going to go ahead and I had more slides. Again, this is a much longer presentation for high school kids. But there are keys, there are clues in this right here that tip you off to be a little extra skeptical, to get your guard up, to lock your deadbolt before you leave the house when it's something like this. First of all, let me just point out right here, no real journalist does the question mark exclamation after that. Second of all, I mean, there's a huge red warning symbol. We can talk about the flags that Facebook does. Obama-led UN. Right? Already we're off to a rocky start, right? Breaking Obama-led UN. Now, I don't know if it's supposed to be the most ineffective organization in the world, or if we're leading it and dragging it through. I don't know if you guys know about Security Council supremacy and Article 51 and Article 7, Chapter 7 powers. But most of the time, they don't refer to it as Obama-led UN. You're already starting with something there. They're not telling you just the news. They're telling you how to feel about the news, right? It's not just a bias. It's an intention, and it's trying to sort of incent a team spirit kind of thing, screw the other team kind of stuff, right? Okay. Oh, guess what Obama and his friends want America to do? It's pretty clear at this point that there's no real substantive news value to there. That's not only trying to clickbait you in, but it's trying to little dog whistles and all kinds of things that are supposed to sort of reinforce what you already think about Obama regardless, right? Because nobody's changing their minds over this post. Again, let's back up and look at sometimes how this works. And I put sometimes because this is not even close to all the time, but this is a really great example that BuzzFeed News did They went into this investigation that shows how hyper-partisan political news gets made. They do it by examining 2 articles, one from a seemingly conservative site and a seemingly leaning liberal site, right? And look again, there it is telling you how to feel about it right in the title, right? You say, okay, this one's for Republicans, this one's for Democrats. I remember that's for Democrats, it's for Republicans. What you don't know, well, you probably know both of them are fake because Kellyanne Conway's still around. But what you don't know is these are owned by the same company. Okay, they're pushing outrage, and that is intentional division, right? And this is not every case. Again, there are people out there who just share remember every time your grandma would forward you the 16 forward, the chain emails or the chain letters that would go back to analog? This is not a new phenomenon. It's just way, way more effective at the moment. And so we have to be more on guard, right? So, how do you spot it? Right? So there's 3 key areas that you want to pay attention to when you're going to be dealing with a piece of information or new information or something where you are going to incorporate that into what your daily life is, right? One is nuance. So the more nuanced and subtle the issues that you're talking about are, the more opportunity there is for spin and perspective and these kinds of manipulations. I'm not saying that interpretation is everything or it's nothing, but it's a mix. But when something is extremely nuanced or it has little common knowledge attached to it, for instance, the war in Syria, any kind of global climate migration and refugee effects, these are things that most people don't know about, and it's easily manipulatable. I had to drink water, my mouth is like dried up. Stakes, number 2. Not Trump stakes, it's just regular stakes, like how important are the stakes? If we're talking about something, whether or not that video of the lightning strike and the guy on the bike and he totally flips out and survives, if we're talking about that, then the stakes aren't really that high. Worst case scenario, oh, neat video, I shared it. Know that like automatic, paint color changing motorcycle is not real, right? So there's a low stakes there. But if we're talking about, hey, are we about to invade a country that didn't attack us? That's when the stakes are high. That's when you have to be on guard for misinformation, right? Your guard has to be up. I personally fell victim to that sort of fake news, and I joined the military thinking Iraq had everything to do with 9/11, and I went to Iraq for a year in 2008 and learned, oh my goodness, this is not the story I was told, right? So there are huge things that can happen as a consequence, and there are not so huge things, okay? Finally, it's the urgency. Things like elections have urgency. They don't have time to be debunked. Things like war and peace do not have time to sit around and wait for the New York Times to retract an article about how we need to go to war with Iraq because now 10 years later they learned their lesson and then, oh, by the way, here comes Syria, let's do it again. You know what I'm saying? This kind of thing does not allow for reflection, and that's what is very dangerous because that's when people will take advantage of that urgency, right, and of the complexity of the article or the issue and the things that are at stake. And they will use that and push that to get their agenda regardless of what the truth may be. Okay? But overall, the important thing to remember here is not about finding or asserting truth often. Most of the time it's about selling outrage or supporting your political team. Right? News is sports nowadays in a lot of ways. And I'm not talking about local news so much because I work with 150 local news partners, right? There are a lot of people trying to do this well, but again, not everybody's doing it on purpose. Sometimes you fall prey to structural or cultural constraints about how, wow, you guys not been able to hear me this whole time? Okay. This is, yeah. So sometimes it's not about that. Most of the time it's about selling outrage, right? And the new Neiman Lab study just came out that says stories may have political impact less by persuading than by reminding people which side they're on, right? And you notice this isn't just in news. This is in stand-up comedy. This is in media. This is in culture. Any subversive comic out there, you look at Dave Chappelle versus what's the guy who steals jokes? And I can't remember his name right now. It's blanking. But a subversive comic has similar audiences on both sides because people take what they want from the joke based on what they already believe, and they do the same thing with news articles. When you're out there Googling to find a good solution for your 10-step plan, make sure you don't Google the answer to the question you already want, because that's what you're doing. You've got confirmation bias, and you tend to naturally gravitate towards, I want to know, is poverty more persistent among this part of New Jersey than this one? And you search that question, right? You want to search for basic information and stats and something you can build a hard case on, evidence, instead of someone else's interpretation of it. So, I'm getting to the end, I swear. We're going to go a little quick through this because we can't have this conversation without talking about memes, okay? Because we're not just talking about news literacy, we're talking about media literacy. And if you don't understand how powerful and influential memes are, I got some memes to show you, okay? And this is from CJR, I'm sorry, yeah, the Center for Columbia Journalism Review published this a while back, called Memes Trump Articles on Breitbart's Facebook page. And they talk about the definition and the debate over fake news, but the point that they refer to is the spread of inaccurate, misleading, or otherwise invented articles passed off as real news. But nobody says anything about the memes, right? Not these memes, okay? Not these. These are funny jokes, and they do support your team, and they do, to some extent, contribute to it. Not those. We're talking about stuff like this. This is the most popular meme on Breitbart in 2016. Okay, it's vague. It doesn't give any specific facts. It just sort of poses a question, right? And gets you thinking, oh, when was that last time? And all of a sudden, your confirmation bias kicks in, and you're like, I never rioted. I'm not, and this is the type of casual, general, vague distribution of information. Right, it's these memes. The most shared article on Breitbart in 2016, according to the same article in CJR, 97,000 shares. Most shared meme, that one we just saw, more than 500,000 shares. Okay? Even if the people who read the article, and it was a perfectly factual article, it's more than 5 times as many people saw that vague statement of disgust for the other team, right? Again, I'm almost done. Sorry, this went longer than I thought. So basically, again, the post is implications while Democrats vilify Republicans, Democrats are the ones who riot. It doesn't say so. It just suggests. And if you already know the answer and you already know what team you're on, you know. This isn't trying to convert anybody. This is like firing up a base, and that's what both sides do it. Everybody does it. This is not an issue of individual blame, but this is an issue of structure and how we pit each other against each other, and we play with our policy and our news as if they were sports, right? Just because you were born somewhere doesn't mean you should be a Giants fan. I just don't like the Giants, and that's okay, right? I am a New Jerseyan, and I don't like the Giants, and that's okay. You tell my dad that, please. I would appreciate it. Okay? And again, so basically, Breitbart fans, fill Breitbart fans with any demographic you want, any team you want, and they're encouraged to share pieces of information without context in order to break existing media structures. And again, Facebook is not helping them do it, but there are other structural issues at play. So real quick to wrap up, what can we do? I'm going to go through these a little quick so we can get to questions. Verification. Obviously, we did that at the beginning. That's a lot of fun. It's easy. You can do it with kids. And it really teaches them to be internet detectives, as I like to say. Because anybody who's grown up on the internet knows, well, they don't know, but they get a pretty good sense of when somebody's trying to fool them. Like, yeah, the video's too good to be true. And there are YouTube channels that debunk these things. There are efforts all over the place. There's First Draft News, first of all. Snopes recently raised about over $500,000 from people because it was so important to them. Anytime you go to Snopes, anytime you see something maybe questionable, throw it into Snopes, throw it into Google, throw these things and see if you can get other reference points for them. TinEye is a reverse image search function, and I'm going to make this presentation available to anybody if you want to use the resources that I have at the end. TinEye, you can put an image into Google basically, and it'll show you anywhere else that image shows up, show you information about it, see if it was edited, right, when it was first posted. So if you're talking about something that supposedly happened in 2011, and you see a big crowd of people rioting, and you're like, oh, that doesn't, first of all, it doesn't look like that's English on the side, maybe this isn't from my country, you look at TinEye, this is from like 2014, this picture's from after the supposed date. Time and time again this happens, and all it takes is a little bit of a search to say, maybe scratch this skeptical itch really quick, right? And again, there are efforts by more institutionalized organizations. There are local ones, which I'll get to in a minute. I think Civic Story is still here. NJ Penn has done articles on this. There's gamification. There are news apps that take advantage of the popularity of swiping left and right. I know all of you are on Tinder here, I'm sure. But if you're not, it's pretty simple. I like it, I don't like it. And you do the same thing with fake news. It's a fake headline or real headline, and it trains you to start figuring out and take a little more critical look. Again, if you have an Amazon Echo, you can play fake news with the Echo skill. Sit in your room or with a bunch of people, and you all try to figure out which ones are fake. In fact, another Neiman Lab report came out and talked about how games are useful, and the gamification argument's been around. Again, the first draft observation we did earlier, there's like 5 of those things and more. You got to check that out, First Draft News. Tech solutions, there's people who are trying to do VR solutions to disinformation. There are so many interesting conversations happening around this, which is why this is so quick and condensed, because I want to have time for questions, but there's so much to talk about. And I get really excited about this because this is one of the most interesting problems of our time, at least mine right now, in terms of how do we communicate with each other, how do we actually solve our problems, because when you're talking about media literacy, you're talking about stuff, essentially. You're talking about communicating, and that every issue falls under that umbrella. You have to communicate about everything, which is why if you don't solve this, you are going to be doomed to repeat these issues over and over again. Again, retraining, there are people who are trying to retrain journalists, trying to create new peer-to-peer networks to verify things. You have little, think pieces. There's think pieces out the wazoo. There's think pieces everywhere, but a lot of them are decent and they make good points. Like, hey, it's not always about changing minds, and it's not always possible to change minds. Sometimes it's about changing your own mind and addressing your own assumptions, right? And I have a source list at the end of this that you guys can all download. Again, here's a local partner who is talking about challenging your own assumptions before you go out there and start pointing fingers. njpen.com, and check that out. I don't have a slide for you, Susan, but Civic Story is another one, a no-blame, nonpartisan politics website. You can focus on more on fighting bad journalism and less on fake news. The same practices that got us into this mess often are the ones that are causing us to stay in it. So if we look at ourselves again, we can say, hey, maybe I'm not doing the best job I could, and maybe at least I got to get my stuff together before I start getting everybody else's involved. And again, philanthropy is coming to dumping a bunch of money into all these things as well, including the Knight Foundation, which the center is funded by in part. So full disclosure, but they dump like hundreds of thousands of dollars into these projects, and God bless them. I hope they do, but I think it really starts in here, at home, and at the dinner table, really. Again, there's always one thing you should do, is call lies, lies, and falsehoods, falsehoods. Not doing so undermines credibility and the trustworthiness with the public, even if it may infuriate partisans at times. But also, cover the partisans who support powerful people who lie. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. If you want a full list of sources of everything we talked about and more, you can go to this website, and it should be a little, it looks terrible, but it's useful. It's called One Tab.
Can you go back to the contact info?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry. Was okay? We're good? Is that okay? We're good? All right, yeah, okay, cool. Yeah. Let's do some questions. Resources. You want to do it? Okay. Do you need we don't need a microphone, right? Or
I'll
for the-
be a microphone. There used to be a law regarding radio.
Yes.
That required
I know what you're
a
talking about.
rebalance between liberal and conservative
Yeah.
positions. Do you feel it would be good to bring that back and then to expand that to television news? And if so, how do we make that happen?
In principle, the idea of the equal time is what you're talking about?
Yes.
That sounds great. The reality is there are more than two sides. There are more than liberal and conservative, and there are more dimensions to the issues like that. And I think that's how we got in the same situation we are with climate change coverage, where we talk about, well, we have a climate denier and we have a climate scientist, and there should be, in reality, 97 climate scientists and maybe one or two climate change skeptics, right? I mean, this is just the evidence borne out over and over again, peer-reviewed, and yet we have the false dichotomy and the false equivalence at the same time. Not only are there more than two sides, but also the sides aren't equally represented. I mean, you want to be respectful to the other side, but when the other side, or the other argument, or one of the arguments is against the evidence and is harming people, and the urgency and the stakes are so high, it's important to be extra skeptical and represent those equally, in my opinion. Equitably, not equally. So to each, according to its value in terms of the argument. I hope that answered. I know this is a little assertive, but I don't mean it.
Mr. Caldwell?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Dr.
they always say follow the money. How do these folks make money with fake news? Is someone paying them to do this or what?
Advertising, baby. All that sweet clickbait money. There you go. Yeah, advertising. Not only that, I mean, if you look at some of the more hyper partisans, a lot of them sell male vitality supplements along the way of fear of impotence across the land. I mean, they generate fear and they generate a sense of urgency and danger, and then they sell you things that will solve that. It's like when they walk in and go, wow, boy, hope nobody robs this place. You might need some protection, right? Is that sort of, you give them, you assert a problem that may or may not be real, and then you provide a solution to it for money, right? Either that or you sell the customer, the mass of viewers that you get, to the highest advertiser bidder for the most views. And I'm very simplifying the advertising business, so I don't mean to do that, but we have only so much
Jump
time.
in really quick. So there was an incident in Macedonia. A bunch of kids found out that they were able to game Facebook by producing a whole ton of fake news, pushing it out there, and catering to both sides. You had one side clicking on that news story that was clearly fake, but they were able to generate revenue simply from clicking on those articles. So since you get a view, you're able to make money that way. So there's also a financial incentive out there that creates this fake news. So it's also to be mindful of that as well.
Yeah, and also it can get you elected. I mean, no, I mean, there's a power as well as money and power. It can change people's minds, or not change it necessarily, but enrage people, right, so that they take action, or they show up at the polls when the other folks who weren't stoking the rage and the fear, they're like, oh, you know, I'm gonna go, this is a blue state, or it's a red state, I'm pretty solid here. But the other people are like, the world is coming to an end, they're taking our guns, they're killing the planet, I mean, and a lot of those things may be true, we are kind of killing the planet, right? But the way that you go about that is neither respectful of the issue and the gravity of that issue, nor the people who are going to be your audiences, so to speak. And so that's where you get. You both manipulate people, and you can make a little sweet money on the side for those sweet ad money. Yeah.
I know you said you do this with students. What is their reaction or response to it? Because we look at it and we go, okay, wow, we know there's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Are students seeing the difference between the laughs and the seriousness of what you're presenting?
I think a lot of them are, and I base that on the critical nature of the questions they ask afterwards. They don't let me just sit up there and like throw a bunch of memes up there and they're like, yeah, I agree with it. They're critical, they're aware, and they are hip to it. I mean, they know that stuff is messed up right now. They know that, and they can sense it. And they may be influenced by where their upbringing, obviously. But they all sort of seem to feel a sense of urgency to do something about it. And it's up to us as a society to guide them in the right direction of what to actually do. Is it to do the same tactics that that worked on? I was raised on Fox News and Rush Limbaugh as a kid. And talk radio and these intimate forms of communication with people who talked to my dad right in his ear, who then talked to me, and I took it as gospel. But these kind of intimate relationships between the media and ourselves these days, where we're in our car by ourselves in traffic, and the only person that's keeping my mind off ramming into the back of this guy on the parkway is another guy who's amping me up about how mad I should be. And it's only me and him, and I don't get a say. Right? And so years of that, and this is not just for radio, but years of that, it builds you, especially from the ages of what do you say, 12 to 20? Who was it, the 10 to 20? You think the best songs are from them. What about the best rants and the best, I still hear things, and I find myself saying them, and I'm like, oh my God, that's a catchphrase. Like, how did this get into my brain? I thought it was my idea, but it's not. It's from years of slogans and rhetoric coming out, and I regurgitate it. And the same thing goes for stand-up comics. My dad does this all the time. You get a funny or witty joke or thought or a fact or a stat that supports your belief system, and not only do you then appropriate that accidentally, but oftentimes you just straight up plagiarize it and regurgitate it in common conversation and hope that the other person hasn't seen that stand-up special, right? Tell me if I'm lying, because I do it. I used to do it all the time. I still probably do it all the time. I know. Yeah.
In your folders, we actually have a document that lists a bunch of tells and just guidelines that you should follow when doing this research. And the first one is check your bias. So if you read a story and it gives you a visceral reaction upon reading it, maybe just take a step back. Consider what it's saying. Consider exactly where it's coming from. Take some of the advice that Joe gave you and ensure that it's actually coming from a truthful place. There are plenty of others on there on that sheet, and I encourage you to take a look at it.
One more thing before we go. Read the more it makes you uncomfortable, the more you should read it. Right. The more I just finished Mitch McConnell's new book. I had to take a few showers, but I got through it, right? And now I know how he presents himself to his base. I know how he talks. I know how he thinks he wants people to think about him. It is hard to do. Not always easy to read that bleeding heart liberal over there and is crying about how everything is injustice, and yet he's doing it on his iPhone. Read it. Read it and internalize it and understand it and try to see from their perspective. Not so that you agree with them necessarily. You may very well find out after self-inquiry, I was right this whole time. It is bad to torture people. Oh my God, you don't have to understand or agree with the other side, but you got to understand how they justify it to themselves and the people who agree with them, so that you can learn to dismantle the causes of that belief and the assumptions that they're based on, including your own. Not just so you can beat them in a tit-for-tat show of argument and wit, banter in your local podcast or your friends group at the cafeteria lunch table. Again, this is high school student stuff, so you're gonna have to bear with. I know it's catered towards them, but yeah.
One more question.
Susan.
Joe, I think you made a really important point that there's more than two point of views. So I just wondered if you could talk about the third space. This is a third space. It's nonpartisan, no blame. There's more and more nonprofit media. Are you hopeful that there can be a third space in our daily news, a trustworthy space?
Oh man. So this is something that I've been thinking about all the time. Obviously, not just Are we having nonprofit or for-profit? Are we having commercial supported, listener supported? I want to see community funded, community owned, and community directed in a way. So I want to use things like our special improvement district, our special service district laws in the United States, which allow you to create a geographic revenue source by getting with the community and then passing a resolution that says we need public information. Public information and journalism is a public service. We're going to fund it like a public service, and we're going to treat it like one and give it the respect and deference that it often deserves. Now again, you're not challenging things, right? And to go to the third space, we need to what I'm saying is we need to create structures and institutions that allow for the community to decide what they need and then tell people and they provide it to them. And whether that takes the form of some special district thing or if it takes the form of some modification of the equal time law that includes some sort of nuance there, I don't know. And if I had those answers, I'd be making one right now. I would be, and I'm trying to. It's just a really long process, and I'm really I'm looking at these 10 steps here, and it's I'm way out of order on a lot of this. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Joe.
All right, thank you guys.
All right, I just wanted to thank Joe especially. This is fantastic. He not only brought information, but he brought a sense of humor. So God bless you, Joe. I learned a lot. I mean, I always thought fake news was one side trying to influence the other side. Now I understand that there's just people trying to make money off my emotion.
And figure the world out. Yeah.
And so